First, verify that this function has an inverse relation that is also a function. Well, we know that the parent function y equals x cubed looks like this. And then if we just do a vertical translation 2 units, it looks like that. This clearly passes the horizontal line test. So the inverse relation of this function is itself a function. Next, find the slope of the inverse function. Well, let's look at the inverse function. It'll be a reflection through the line y equals x. So it looks something like this. And they ask us to find the derivative of the inverse function for a particular value of a, and in this case, when a is 4. So this is the input into the blue inverse function. So if you went 4 to the right, how high up would we be? But more specifically, what will the slope be at that point? That's what they're asking for, the derivative or the slope when you move forward to the right. All right, well, we already know that we've determined in class that the slope here will be the reciprocal of the slope here. And if the input here was 4, the output on this point will be 4. So let's determine the input here. That's going to be needed for the formula. Also, it's needed because if we find the slope here, we'll need to know what the x value was. So we have 2 ways we can find the slope of the inverse function when a is 4. We can find the slope here and then just do the reciprocal, or we can use the formula. First, I'm just going to find the slope here to get the answer. And then after that, I'll come back and redo the problem by using the formula that I think a lot of you have memorized. All right, so first of all, the slope here of function f prime is equal to 3x squared. So the slope requires that we know the x value. Well, to determine the x value, we can use the fact that we know the output value is 4. So if the output was 4, then 4 equals x cubed plus 2. So x cubed has to equal 2, and raising both sides to the 1/3 power, x is equal to 2 to the 1/3 power. So the slope at 2 1/3, or 7/3, is 3 times 7/3 squared, which is 49/3. Therefore, the slope here will be the reciprocal of the slope there. The reciprocal of 49/3 is 3/49. All right, now let's do this problem using the formula. The formula says the slope of the inverse function is equal to 1 divided by f prime of f inverse at 4. So what's supposed to go in there, and what's f prime? Well, we already know f prime is 3x squared. But what do we input? What's this white thing that we input into f prime, into 3x squared? Well, 4 is the input in the inverse function, so 4 will be the output of this function. 4 equals x cubed plus 2. So we get 2 1/3 again. So using the formula, this is 1 over f prime of 2 1/3, which we've already determined. The derivative at 2 1/3 was 49/3. The derivative at 2 1/3 is 49/3, and 1 divided by 49/3 is 3/49. Well, I hope one of these methods made sense to you. I do have a third way I can explain this, but only ask me to do a problem like this the third way if neither of these 2 ways I showed in this video make a lot of sense to you. All right, we'll call it.